It was good
Okay.
that you sent out the reminder.
Okay, great. So welcome everyone to Daf Yomi, 1 week at a time. This is lesson one, part two. So thank you everyone for your support. It was a little frustrating. I would say it was actually a lot frustrating last night when I lost internet. So Be'ezrat Hashem, the internet will stay stable for at least the next half hour. What I plan to do is to finish up. I'm not going to start from the beginning. So for hopefully last night was recorded the first half hour, and that will be uploaded separately, and then they will upload this shiur as well. So this is part two. We are actually on Daf 4. Daf Dalid, and I'm going to share my screen with you again. If you remember our pictures from last night, okay, I'm going to open up my chat box if anybody wants to talk to me. Okay, so yesterday we were in the middle of talking about different dimensions for the Sukkah, and exactly when we got cut off, we actually got to a very exciting part. The following are going to be some fundamental concepts that we are going to learn in Masechet Sukkah. So the first fundamental concept is called, again, in Hebrew, Aramaic, dofen akuma. Dofen akuma means a bent wall. However, as you can see in this picture, there is nothing bent, but this is how it works. Let's say you put schach in the middle of a room. Again, the assumption is that this room is on the top floor of a house, or you only have one floor. You open up like a skylight, and you put schach in there. The Gemara tells us that as long as there are less than 4 amot, just to remind us, amma, cubits from your elbow, from your fingertip to your elbow, as long as there are less than 4 amot to the wall, we can view it as if the wall is bent. So just visualize it's as if kind of the wall goes to the schach, the roof that's in the center of the room. So that is one concept. So dofen akuma, within 4 amot of the wall, as long as the schach, the proper, the valid roof of a sukkah is within 4 amot of the wall, it counts as kosher, even though, as you can see here, there's solid wall on different sides. So that is very important to understand. The Gemara continues. Again, we are on Daf 4. The Gemara continues. Again, so anybody who's just joining, we are doing the second half of our lesson. The first half we started last night. That will be uploaded as well. So we are at the bottom of Daf 4, or at the middle actually of Daf 4. And now we're talking about a small sukkah. Remember we said that the minimum height of a sukkah is 10 tefachim. Just to remind us, tefach is the fist, the hand breadth. So 10 tefachim, as we saw, anybody who did this in their house last night, it's very small. So the Gemara says here, what if it's shorter than 10? But now I dig down. Just to remind us, last night we talked about something being too tall and building it up from the bottom. Now it's too short, so I dig down into your backyard. So would this be okay? The Gemara says it would be okay as long as it's within 3 tefachim of the wall. Here is our next fundamental concept, and those of you who were with me for Masechet Eruvin might remember this. The concept is called lavud. Lavud means we're going to see these two areas connected because there's such a small area in between. The maximum area would be 3 tefachim. So 1, 2, 2.5, 2 3/4. We view that small area as if it's not there. And then, let's say in our case here in the picture, it would be that the pit is as if it is going through the entire length of the floor. And then it would be valid. Okay. Next. The next case is, again, our very high sukkah. Remember, we said the maximum height, at least according to the first opinion in the Mishnah, is 20 amot. If it is taller than 20 amot, look at this case. This is, I think, very creative. Now, last night we suggested making a platform on the side. Now the Gemara suggests, what about making a pillar in the middle of your sukkah? Now, this pillar needs to have a certain dimensions. It needs to be 4 by 4 with 10 tfachim high. If you remember, this is a good quiz to remind us. If you remember from Masechet Shabbat, 4 by 4 and the height of 10 tfachim is a significant domain. And therefore, if you did this, and now you see here how they put the chair on top, meaning you would have to sit on top of this pillar, then would that be valid? Now, here is another concept called gud asik. Gud asik, this is Aramaic, for viewing, you can see here the arrows, the sides of this pillar are going to virtually, not literally, but virtually extend all the way up to the top of the sukkah. And it's as if you, sitting on this chair, are enclosed in a personal-sized sukkah. Again, 4 by 4, 10 tfachim high, and then this would be a proper sukkah. Interestingly enough, even though all around you is not a valid sukkah. So that is interesting. We're going to see this concept again. Again, it's called gud asik, meaning that the walls or the sides of whatever we're talking about, whatever structure we're on, continue up to wherever we want. So the next case in the Gemara on Daf Dalid, is what if you put 4 pillars? It's not clear in the beginning of the Gemara, but later on it's clear that it's on the rooftop. You put 4 pillars, and then you put the schach, the valid roof of a sukkah on the top. Is this considered a valid sukkah? What's the issue? If you look carefully, there are no walls, right? And we said yesterday you need a minimum of 2 and a few, 2 and a little bit, right? 2 and a little bit of a third wall. How does this work? Again, the Gemara says, gud asik, we view, and you can see here with the arrows, the wall of the building as extending all the way up to the schach, to the roof, and basically enclosing your sukkah. Now, the Gemara explains this only works if those 4 pillars or posts are at the edge. However, look here, if the pillars are in the middle, now it's a machloket if it works, because as you can see, there's no wall that can just continue, right? Here we don't say that you can bend walls, and here it says that it is pasul, it is not valid, because I do not have any walls, right? This looks like a really nice gazebo or pergola, and not a sukkah. So that's just fascinating. Another suggestion that's given in the Gemara is that the post that this is standing on, right, that circle post, the Gemara says that really, if you look carefully, we could say that it's actually made up of a right angle, and if each side of that right angle is a tefach, then maybe it itself counts as a wall. Now, this is going to be based on something that we learned again in Masechet Shabbat and Masechet Eruvin, the concept of the well. If you remember when we talked about the 3 times a year that the Jewish people went to Jerusalem and they needed to do what's called Aliyah Regel, go to Jerusalem, they would have to stop on the way at the well. Now, if it's Shabbat, the well is in a public domain. How could they drink from it? How can they, feed their animals? So they would make basically these 4 corner brackets, right? One on each side, and each one was this L shaped. So you can see here, like the L shape that's in this picture. And the Gemara in Masechet Shabbat and in Eruvin say that even if it's a tefach, right? Each side is only a tefach, it counts like it's a wall. So the Gemara says, well, maybe I can learn from that to here, and maybe this would also be kosher in and of itself, or valid, I should say, in and of itself. Let's continue to Daf 5. Daf 5 asks us, again, we started yesterday from the Mishnah that told us the minimum height of the Sukkah is 10 tfachim. The Gemara now wants to understand, where do we get the number of 10 tfachim? And the Gemara on Daf 5, on Daf Hey, says, we actually learn it from the Aron, from the Ark. Here's a beautiful picture. The golden ark, the ark of the tablets that sat in the tabernacle, in the Mishkan, and also in the Beit HaMikdash, in the temple, was, and the Gemara tells us that it was 9 tfachim high, the actual ark, and then the top, which is called the kaporet, the cover, that was 1 tefach, and therefore 9 plus 1, we get 10. And what's interesting, and this I think we can think about, it says that God spoke to the Jewish people from on top of the ark, right, from the kruvim. You can see here we have the cherubs. You can't really see their face, but from the top of this, or between their wings, God spoke to the Jewish people. And from here, the Gemara extrapolates that God can come down into our world up to 10 tfachim. He does not go lower. And the basis for this is, right, God tells us the heavens, hashamayim shamayim laHashem, the heavens are for God, and the aretz, land, or the earth, or whatever you want to call it, right here, this was given to man. This is seen, I would say, philosophically. This is seen maybe literally, but here the Gemara is taking it very literally. God's presence, Shekhinah, only comes down up to 10 tfachim, and therefore we want our sukkah to be at least 10 tfachim. Again, that goes back to yesterday, what we were talking about. The sukkah is a structure that is meant to connect us to God, make us think about our connection to God, our relationship to God. Therefore, we want to touch God's domain. Again, I don't mean to imply that God can't be lower than 10 tfachim. But I think this concept is God only came down to, right, his domain is up to 10 tfachim. From here, the Gemara goes through a lengthy discussion on how do we know that the kaporet, the cover, is actually 1 tefach, and we are going to learn it not from this picture. This picture is the zer, the crown. We actually mentioned that at the end of Masechet Yoma, that there were 3 crowns on 3 vessels in the temple. The Gemara says we're not going to learn it from this crown, this ornament, because it's not intrinsically part of the table. Rather, we're going to learn it from the actual base of the table, which the Torah tells us is 1 tefach, and therefore, since it is an intrinsic part of the vessel, and it's 1 tefach, it's 1 handbreadth, so we're going to extrapolate that to the kaporet, the cover, and we're going to say that that is also it is also 1 tefach. The Gemara then continues and asks, again, what are these? What are these kruvim? Again, as I mentioned, here are the kruvim. The Gemara tells us that they had the face of a child, and right, you would say right like a cherub, right, a baby's face maybe. That's how they were depicted. The Gemara asks, how do we know that? Again, that the internal space of the sukkah needs to be 10 tfachim, and the Gemara learns it from the proportions of the ark, including the kruvim, to the top of the wall, basically the ceiling of the temple and of the Mishkan, the tabernacle. And basically, through very interesting calculations, says that it is basically 1/3 the height of the building. You can see here, if the building is 60 tfachim, then the height of the aron needs to be 20 tfachim. And therefore, here it's saying that, again, remember we said God speaks from the top of the kruvim. So from the top of the ark to the top of the kruvim is 10 tfachim. Therefore, the Gemara says we need 10 tfachim airspace in the sukkah, not from the outside, not including the roof, but rather from the inside. We need the 10 tfachim. Okay. From here, okay, we're not up to that, so I'll leave it here. From here, the Gemara says that that certain things were right. It goes through a lot of computations, and then it says no. Shiurim. Shiurim are right measurements or amounts. Sorry, let's start from the beginning of the sentence. Mechitzot, meaning valid walls or partitions. Chatzitzim, things that interpose between the skin and the water, that has to do with mikvah, and shiurim, certain amounts. All of these details are actually what we call halacha leMoshe miSinai. Literally, right, these are laws that were given to Moshe on Har Sinai, at Sinai, meaning they are not, you don't have to do these calculations, you don't have to start doing math. Rather, this was a tradition. The tradition is that the sukkah needs to be 10 tfachim high. But then the Gemara says, wait a minute, shiurim, don't worry, we're getting back to that picture, but I'm going to share another picture. The Gemara says, wait a minute, shiurim, amounts, are actually, didn't we learn that they're actually from the Torah? Aren't they deoraita? Aren't they biblical in origin? And this goes back to something we learned. Now, we actually have learned this a few times. So if those of you, and I think I actually showed this picture, so if it looks familiar, I hope it looks familiar. We learned this in Brachot, I think in Shabbat and in Psachim, that there is a very famous verse. It's also a song, right? Eretz chita v'se'ora v'gefen v'te'ina v'rimon, eretz zit shemen udvash, right? The land of Israel was blessed with the 7 species, right? Wheat, barley, grapes, figs, pomegranates, and the land has olives. And here, dvash does mean honey, but not bee honey, rather date honey. So actually, there's a little bit of a mistake here on this picture, because it says here Tamar, but it's pointing to a fig, which is not true. It's reversed. So the fig and the date are whatever the word is. Are in the wrong place. I'll make it a little bit bigger so you can read the words. I'm not going to go through each one of these. If you'd like you can take a screenshot of this. But basically, the Gemara goes through each one of the 7 species and explains how each one is the volume for something else. It's called the shiur. It's the amount for a different law. I would say a very famous one we all know, kezayit, is most of the food that when we talk about laws of food, we say you have to eat an olive volume, kezayit. Other things we just learned recently is we talked about the size of the date is the amount that you can up to The amount past that is what you would be liable for on eating on Yom Kippur. So we just did that in Masechet Yoma. And the other ones, some have to do with Shabbat, some have to do with impurity. But we see here that it does come from, it seems to come from the Torah. And the Gemara says, no. Really, it's a tradition that's been passed down all the way from Sinai, what these shiurim are, what these volumes are. However, we found a link to it in the Torah, right? It's connected to the verse. The same thing, again, we're on Daf 6 now. The same thing when we're talking about chatzitza. Chatzitza is when a person immerses in the mikvah, in the ritual bath, they need to be completely immersed, and the water needs to touch your whole body. So we're not allowed to have something that blocks the water from our skin. This blocked thing is called a chatzitza, something that prevents the water from getting to our skin. So again, we said that it is a tradition, but isn't it also biblical in origin? So the Gemara explains on Daf 6 that the biblical origin is something that covers either most of your body or you really don't want it on your body, right? Dirt. We do not want dirt on our skin. That would be deemed a chatzitza, something that is blocking the water. But if it's something very small and we really don't care, biblically, that would be okay. Rabbinically, and again, here comes the tradition says no. Even if it's small, we still we still see it as a blocking the water, as a chatzitza, and therefore it is not okay. And if anybody is familiar with preparations to go into the mikvah, they are quite meticulous. We make sure that there are no knots in our hair. We remove all the makeup. We're really very careful that there isn't anything blocking the water from touching our bodies. Okay, and then again, mechitza, as we mentioned, really, again, as we said, what's the rabbinic side? What's the tradition? Again, the tradition is that it's 10 tfachim, but as I mentioned at the beginning of this class, there are numerous kind of, I called them principles that will assist us in creating a valid sukkah, even if I don't necessarily have a straight 10 tfachim wall. So again, we saw that at the beginning. Okay, I'm going to go back to sharing because we have a few more pictures. Done. Okay, back to sharing. Okay, the Gemara now tells us on Daf 6 that, as I mentioned in the beginning, you need, again, in general, most structures have 4 walls. Do we need 4 walls? The Gemara says no. The Gemara on Daf 6 tells us you need a minimum of 2 walls plus. What's this plus? The Gemara tells us it could be a tefach. Again, you can see here very small. This is actually a machloket. There's a disagreement. Some say you actually need 3. Okay, 1 second. Some say you actually need 3 plus, right? So 3 walls plus a little bit. And that is the discussion on daf number 6. And here, again, another very interesting concept in the Gemara. Those of you who are familiar, when we read the Torah on Shabbat, or if you look in a Bible, there's something called the Kri and the Ktiv. Sometimes there's a difference between the way a word is written in the text and the way we read it. So sometimes it'll say, let's say, we'll see later on, it says Sukkot. Well, we'll see actually right now. The Gemara says it says Sukkot. Now, normally when you write the word Sukkot, you put a vav, right? Samach kaf, right? Samach kaf, vav, taf, or samach vav, kaf, taf, right? Taf. But it's Sukkot implies plural. If I want to say Sukkat, right, 1 sukkah, then I don't have the vav towards the end of the word. So the Gemara here teaches us that it says the word Sukkot 3 times, but twice it's written what's called chaser, meaning it's missing a letter. Even though when we read it out loud, we say the word Sukkot, implying plural, it's written Sukkat, which can seem to imply it's only one. And from here, the Gemara goes through some like literary gymnastics on figuring out is it that we can have 2 plus a little bit for our walls, or 3 plus a little bit for our walls. And interestingly enough, there is a difference of opinion. What do we give more weight to? Do we give more weight to the way it's written, because that's the tradition, that's what we see, that was what was passed down in terms of actually being written in the Torah scroll? Or do we give, I would say, maybe more weight to the way we read it, which again is tradition. That's more of an oral law and is a tradition that's passed down from one generation to another. So again, I think we've really discussed here this idea of tradition and how we follow that tradition in every single generation. So with that, we finished our daf. We started yesterday 2 through 4, and today we did 4 through 6. So really, I want to thank everyone, those of you who could join us live. I really appreciate it, and see everyone next week at our regular time. I would like to just take this opportunity, first of all, to thank Lynn Job again for dedicating the learning that we are going to do this month, and also to wish everyone first of all, a Shabbat Shalom and an easy and meaningful Tisha B'Av, a meaningful fast where we are going to mourn the destruction of the temple, but may we merit to see the rebuilding of that temple very soon. So have a wonderful day or night, and see you everyone next week. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.